Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Today my friends at Sideshow have asked me to take a look at their C-3PO 6-scale figure from Star Wars. Let's see how he turned out. Alright, first up as always is going to be the packaging, and it looks really good. We know what to expect from Sideshow and Hot Toys. You get some solid photography on the cover, as well as the Lucas-dictated design that goes all the way around the box. Now, Sideshow brought some more of that photography to bear in the back of the box in a really graphically pleasing way. I like how that turned out. It's just an interesting motif, and it's going to continue in the interior of the box. But before we get to that, I kind of want to get to the inside of it and show you the interior art. You can see a little bit of a hint of that C-3PO motif that's going to continue around the sides, but I'll get back to that. Here we have just more interesting applications of the photography. It's really a solid new, for me at any rate, unfamiliar technique that they're using. And they're blending it into this really cool, these really close-up details of the piece, just sort of modified from the photography. Well, let's get into the guts. Hello, old friend. We meet again. I've spent quite a few moments, to say the least, with this figure, and it looks as good as I remember it. First impressions right out of the box are that the joints, especially these finger joints, are really tight. Not unpleasantly so, not to the extent that I think I'm going to have any issues with them. Just comfortably tight. Like, I think that I get the impression that those joints are going to last a good long while. Not a whole lot to show here, so let's just go ahead and get right into the posing session. Just a side note, he does come with a stand that I don't think you're going to need to use. It stands up pretty well on its own. Now, the first thing we want to do is get into that head, get into the base of the neck where the batteries are, and get that thing ready to light up. So you start by popping off the head. Now be careful where you grip it, because those ears and that thing on the top there, they're very delicate. Grab it by the front and by the back, and it should lift right off. There's a little piece of plastic between the two batteries. Pull that out, and your C-3PO is ready to go. Just reinsert the head just like so, and poof. You can see that eyes are already on. That little area on the back is touch sensitive. You don't even have to press a button. Just lay your finger up against it, and boom, on, off. Very easy peasy. I love what they did with that. It's the similar technique that they applied to their R2-D2, and it works exceptionally well. Now, when we're dealing with C-3PO, it's all about posture and about the little details, and one of the things you really want to pay attention to is how to pose the hands. I've got a very specific technique that I like to use, a specific placement for each digit. It involves bending the finger slightly more the further you get from the index finger. So the little finger is the one that is bent the most, the ring finger slightly less, the middle finger even slightly less than that, and the index finger is only ever so slightly bent. Now, you can see that I'm doing that there in the little inset. That's a fairly decent demonstration. I'm going to correct that a little bit here in a bit. There's also a very specific way that C-3PO points. So when you're having him point with his index finger, you're going to want to bend the other three fingers down, but not have them all completely curled into like a fist, the way that you and I would. Anthony Daniels only bends at that first joint with those fingers. I'm not sure if it's a consequence of the glove that he was wearing, or if that was a decision on his part, sort of a bit of character he was imbuing onto C-3PO. Now, as I'm posing this figure, I'd like you all to take a look at some of the finer things that I've done with C-3PO's body. Specifically, I'm talking about his posture. Notice his legs, his feet, the proximity of his feet to each other. Frequently, I tell people when they're posing any figure to have the feet about shoulder width apart. Break that rule with C-3PO. More often than not, you'll notice Anthony Daniels keeps his feet mostly together, not all the way together. Not like he's standing at attention, but a very proper, very poised appearance. In addition to that, you'll notice he frequently arches his back. See, there's a little bit of a back. Now that back will arch a bit more than that, so don't go all the way with the back arch, just a little bit more than you would with your ordinary character. You've all seen the film. You're familiar with the character. Go back and just pay attention to the way that he acts with his body, because he can't act with his face. He's behind a helmet. So most of his performance reveals itself in the positioning of the character's body. As you can see, once you've got it dialed, then you can pretty quickly nail an effective C-3PO pose. Now, because that took like very little time whatsoever, I think... Anybody want me to do a second pose? Yeah, maybe? Okay, I'll do a second pose. Now, before I get into the next pose, I'm just going to point out, look at that. They included not one, but 2 restraining bolts, and they just attached to C-3PO's chest via a magnet. I'm guessing that the 2 restraining bolts were in case you happen to lose one. They are very tiny, and they have a tendency to roll if they fall off of a table. So, yeah, nice and thoughtful of them. I really appreciate that. I haven't lost one yet, but that's not to say that I won't someday. All right, first pose, pointing pose, gesturing pose can be good for anything from what makes you think there are settlements over there to that R2 unit is in prime condition, a real bargain. So let's do something different. But before I do, you can see here that I'm trying to get that comm link into his fingers, which is somewhat challenging, but it's that you're able to do it. The issue that I'm contending with here isn't so much the ability to get the comm link into his hands, and to get C-3PO to grip it in a way that, that it doesn't actually fall out of his hands at the slightest provocation. The real issue is that I can't, you can see here, that's as close as his hand is going to come to his mouth. So if you're going to do this, there has to be more of an implication that he's about to use the comm link than that he's actually in the action of using it. If you want to have him holding it maybe down at his side or something like that, I'm sure that would work as well. But for the purposes of this second and final pose in session, I'm going to just have him holding his hands up in the air like, over here, hey, help, please help. Or like he's trying to shoo away a Minoc. Again, these poses are very versatile. You can use this raised arm gesture for multiple things. Just a few more tips. You can see that this is pretty much done. I mean, it's very... I've been posing C-3PO for so long that I think that it's just very easy for me to do it. You can see here that I'm trying to get a little bit of that torso twist in there. C-3PO's torso doesn't really twist all that much. But the key elements to C-3PO are to get the tilt of the head just right. Don't tilt it too much because then it just looks exaggerated and silly. But just a subtle tilt to the head that's going to imply a little bit of that personality that we've all come to know and love. And look, there it is. Yeah, it's so fun. Overall impressions of the figure is that there's not really a whole lot to call out. I think that they did a stellar job. It's an all-plastic body that doesn't read that way. The paint is glorious. Out of the box, it looks really solid. Under lights, it looks incredible. I mean, just look at that. I should point out that I've done almost no photoshopping to these, just minor levels adjustments. This is all just studio lit and straight out of camera. Even the lights on his eyes, that's exactly straight out of the camera. I didn't have to adjust those at all. So yeah, paint, glorious. The weathering. Weathering is a subjective thing. I mean, people remember things differently. One person may remember C-3PO with his weathering at a particular point in the saga, and other people may remember C-3PO with his weathering from a completely different point of the saga. It changes from scene to scene, it really does. Overall, I'm just enthralled with Sideshow C-3PO. I think they did a fine job of bringing him to life. As with all things 6-scale, the collector will have the final say in the creative process, though, and as with all things, it boils down to how you pose it. That's about it, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the video. Until next time, be good to your plastic. Hey, look at you. Made it to the end and everything. If you liked what you saw, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Or, if you're really hardcore, ring that notification bell on the homepage and you'll be sure to be updated every time a new video is posted. Thanks again for watching, and don't forget to be good to your plastic.